Hello, it's been a long time, I know, but I thought, well, it's time to make my comeback now. And unfortunately, I'm starting with a sad video. Today we heard the news about the great Tony Bennett, who's passed away at the age of 96. And for those of you who know me personally, well, I just love the crooners like that, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, et al. And Tony Bennett was really, one of the last of those, really. Apart from, I would say, Jack Jones, and he's still around. But yeah, there's not many of those old singers left, and it's amazing the people he collaborated with. I mean, I saw a clip of him with Judy Garland on her television show, and then collaborated with Amy Winehouse later on, Lady Gaga, Aretha Franklin, Billy Joel, Michael Bublé, uh, teamed up with his idol Frank Sinatra. Well, sort of, because for Sinatra's last studio album, it was a duets album, although there was a twist. And although Sinatra was still around and his voice was clearly not as strong as it was, and he was an old man at this point. He didn't want the artist to be in the same studio as him. So Tony Bennett's vocal was mixed with Sinatra's, and in fact that's what I listened to just before I did this video. The version of the theme from New York, New York, of course. As you can guess, well, it's from the film New York, New York, written by John Candy and Fred Ebb. And in Sinatra and Bennett's duet version, well, they used the original lyrics. So the lyric you probably know, and it's from Frank's original version, the solo version, where he says, "It's up to you, New York, New York." Well, the original lyric, and that Liza Minnelli, Judy Garland's daughter, of course, who sang it originally in the film, well, she says, "Come on through, New York, New York." And so that's what they did for that version. Now, Tony Bennett, for me, well, I think I first discovered him, like many of the crooners, on the Christmas compilation, on a wonderful song called Snowfall, which I always play every Christmas. It just makes me feel warm inside. I mean, his voice is just one of those voices that is powerful, but is also very soothing as well. In his early years, Tony Bennett, unlike his other fellow singers, actually had an opera edge to his voice, and he lost that as he got older, inevitably. However, as he got older, I think his voice actually did get better. It was different, but it was still very strong, which is pretty amazing. And not just singing, one of Tony's loves was painting, and he kept on painting right until the end. And in fact, he kept on singing, although of course he'd retired from public performing. He still practiced every day to keep his brain sharp. And in fact, the Tony Bennett Twitter account said that he'd been at the piano singing his song Because of You. Not the Kelly Clarkson song, no, a very old song, which was Tony Bennett's first hit in the US. So that's quite amazing. And sadly, Tony Bennett was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 6 years ago. But he still actually managed to keep performing for quite a few years. And I think that's really great. One of the things that I really loved is, admittedly, I'm not a fan of Lady Gaga, particularly her pop stuff, but I loved how seeing her friendship with Tony Bennett and, helping him, and, he really adored her and she really adored him, and it was so wonderful to see. It was just absolutely fantastic to see that video. It was when they were recording their final album, Cheek to Cheek, and And you know, they really worked really well, and Lady Gaga actually really suits the genre of jazz and swing. And I remember listening to Tony Bennett's Duets 2 album, where he was joined by fellow young crooner Michael Bublé, and in one of her last performances, Amy Winehouse on a song called Body and Soul, and they were wonderful together. Their voices really did blend really well. And I loved the duet he did with Michael Bublé on the classic standard Don't Get Around Much Anymore. And it was just so brilliant, it really was. And Tony Bennett, in fact, also while doing upbeats, some of his best work is ballads. And particularly his signature song is I Left My Heart in San Francisco, which he recorded in 1962. And in fact, I listened to that just before I did this, and it's just such a good song. It's always gives me goosebumps, that. And The Good Life, that's another good one of his, famous ballad. And for those of you who know me personally, I'm not really such a big fan of musical theatre. And I don't very much like the musical Cabaret. In fact, I mentioned it in my interview with Janet Ellis, not being a fan of Cabaret. However, when it comes to the crooners and some of the songs, like I listened to Jack Jones, actually, I mentioned him doing I Don't Care Much from Cabaret. And Tony Bennett's version of the song Maybe This Time, again, originally performed by, most famously performed by Liza Minnelli in the role of Sally Bowles in the 1972 film, and I think people will always associate with her. But Tony Bennett actually recorded it in the 60s, and when Cabaret was sort of a new, fresh musical, and it's just so wonderful. It's a quiet, chilling song, and then, there's a massive climax, and he holds the note, and it's just absolutely fantastic. One of the other things that I also liked was his album The Playground, which was an album of classic children's songs. He did The Inchworm, most famous by Danny Kaye, of course. Rosie O'Donnell, the chat show host, who was in Disney's Tarzan as well, doing Put on a Happy Face from Bye Bye Birdie. And two songs with Kermit the Frog, Being Green, and a version of Tony's song Firefly. In fact, it's also quite funny because I was watching Bruce Forsyth singing Firefly on the Wogan television show. So, yeah, it's quite spooky, really, given I listened to Tony Bennett the yesterday, really. So, yeah. But, 96, there's no shame in that. I mean, that's a pretty good age, and considering his Alzheimer's, it's really fantastic he's managed to get to that. So, absolutely fantastic. And, yes, it really is the end of an era, I suppose. But just as Sinatra and Dean Martin and all those are remembered, I'm sure we'll all keep playing Tony Bennett's music. And, of course, you know about the Unplugged albums, the MTV, Eric Clapton famously did one. Well, Tony Bennett, out of all people, ended up getting one of his videos played on MTV and decided to introduce a whole new generation to those classic songs, and that's absolutely fantastic. I saw he did Glastonbury in 1998 as well, which was mentioned in the articles in the obituaries, and just absolutely fantastic. And yeah, well, of course it is sad it's gone, but at least he's relieved of that terrible, terrible illness that he had, and at least he's free now. And yeah, Tony, well, thank you for all the music, and you know, I'll keep playing it because I love the crooners. So I will definitely keep playing your music, and yeah, thanks for the music and the memories. And the good thing about being a singer is that his music will live on. And you know, I left my heart in San Francisco. You know, that's a big, big anthem. So I don't think that will ever go away. And I think Tony Bennett's music will stay around. Stay around, I think. So yeah. Right, well, that's it for this one. I'm sorry it's been such a long wait, and I'll be back with TubeMix's Who round, and there's been a new Sonic, so I'll talk a bit about that, and catch up on the latest Doctor 2 news. I know I've been a bit behind, but at least the advantage of being away is there'll be lots of news. So I'd rather there be lots of news than to tell you not very much news at all. So we'll see. But thank you for watching, and if you want to, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the TubeMix YouTube channel. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.